Hi, I'm Talicza.
And I'm Rachael, and this is Transatlantic Crime, a true crime podcast that covers stories from each side of the pond. Every week, we will both cover a separate story with a running theme.
Disclaimer, this podcast will contain swearing and details that some people may find offensive. If you are of a sensitive disposition, listener discretion is advised.
Welcome to Transatlantic Crime.
Crime. So close.
Basically, I didn't sleep very well on Friday night because I just had that whole paranoid I'm gonna get fired thought that you have.
Yep.
Literally had visions of my boss handing me my P45 or a letter going, we decided not to let you pass your probation because we think you're shit. And I was just like, what brain, why? So I was like, right, Saturday night, I'm having a full night's sleep. I do not fucking care. So I took night nurse, which you're not supposed to do if you haven't got a cold, but fuck it. It's taking a load of Benadryl if you're American.
Well,
I suppose.
Here we have NyQuil.
Same difference.
Same thing. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know what the fuck is in it, but it basically it's proper sedative. It's just ketamine. You just out. So I took that, and then I woke up at about 9 o'clock, and Tom wasn't in my bed, and I was like, oh shit, where's Tom? Maybe annoyed him in my sleep, kicked him or snored or whatever.
Yeah.
So half asleep, I texted him going, hey BB, which is what I call him. Because I don't want to call him baby, because that's a bit grim. And then I don't want to be babe. So I call him BB, which is the same thing that I call a dog. So I was like, hey BB, are you okay? Where are you? I got a reply, and I read it when I was half asleep, and it said, I'm at home. And I was like, oh God. He's driven home. He's driven an hour and 45 minutes home.
Yeah.
I was like, what? And then I looked at it again, and I text my brother Tom saying, hey BB, where are you? And he was like,
no.
Hey, I'm at home. I was like, why doesn't he care that I'm calling him BB? And Carly was like, he must have thought it was a typo. And I was like, thank fuck I didn't send him anything else. I have really got to save him in my phone as Tom, a brother.
Yes.
It's the first time that's happened.
Really? And I've also gotten texts like that where it's
have you?
I am someone else's Rachael. It wasn't meant for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
What? What are you wearing?
No, there was one where it was can't wait to see you tonight, with a heart. And I was like, okay, dude.
Real Rachael would have been so chuffed to get that message. What a shame.
Yeah.
Yeah, moral of the story is night nurse really works.
Yeah, wow. That's hilarious. Well, I'm glad your brother didn't give a shit too.
Oh, fuck. He's just had a vasectomy as well, so I was I didn't really know how to ask my brother how his ball sack was, so I was just I was like, hey, how's your knackers? Which is what we call them in England.
Yeah.
And he was like, yeah, they're okay, in a bit of pain, but I'm pretty much fine. And he was like, it was the most undignified procedure I've ever been through.
Oh, I bet. I've never thought about that, actually.
Well, they keep you awake. They just cut a little square just so they can see your shaved ball sack.
Stop it.
Yeah. And I was exposed ball sack in front of people that you can make definite eye contact with. Gross.
It's literally the most I don't want to say ugliest part of the body, but
I mean, it's
really is.
It's probably second to having anus surgery.
Yeah, all of our stuff is inside of us, so we don't have
nice
to
and
look
neat.
at it. Yeah, it's nice and neat in there. But men, it's all out on display.
Yep, like a butcher's bin.
All right, so should we
anyway
get into our episode a little bit? How was your trip to Poland? Do you have any nice updates?
Yeah, I'm probably going to get some hate mail for this, but Polish dumplings, I didn't like them. They're like gyoza.
That's okay. You're allowed to not like certain foods.
They're like gyoza, but instead of being fried, they're boiled, and they're bigger.
Yeah.
And they've got mash in them. like potato mash and like onion and bacon and stuff. And so they were just like super plain and super stodgy. My boyfriend Tom was like, God, that sounds fucking great. And I was like, oh no, see, I like stuff that it like stings the roof of your mouth. Like that's my favorite type of flavor.
Okay. What, like spicy food?
Yeah, anything like vinegar, something that's like really vinegary or really salty or like, do you know what I mean?
Okay.
Something with a little, like a kick, no matter what that kick is. They weren't the best. They were good. It was good to try them though. And we also went to the Pinball Museum, and we thought it was just going to be a museum, come around and look at all these old pinball machines. And I was fine with that. But then you get in there, and there's like a girl with blue hair that's like, okay, so it's like £4 or £3 or something.
Yeah.
And you basically pay that, and you could play all the machines for an hour.
What?
So there was like and you could buy beer. And they just serve 2 types of beer, and you can get like Tyskie. I'm sure you might have seen or tried Tyskie. That's like a really famous Polish beer, which is really nice. Yeah. You just play all of them, and there's like Star Wars ones, Alien
That's amazing.
ones. Oh my God, I wanted to stay there all fucking day.
Is it like a huge warehouse, or are there like different rooms, or what is
basement?
It?
So it's a basement with loads of different rooms. And yeah, you just like, it's like a tunnel, like you just tunnel through the rooms. She was saying like the older machines are this way and the newer machines are this way. And I was playing on like a Super Mario arcade game thing, and I was like, this is fucking amazing. I want one of these at my house. I was like, in the back of my brain, a voice went, you have that at your house. Like, it's just not in a stand-up box.
Yeah.
You just plug it into the TV. It's exactly the same game.
Nintendo,
and then the front of my head was like, I want the box. Like, it was like a childhood dream. It was so fun. Yeah, so I highly recommend that. And there was a bar called like Cosmic Bar or something that was supposed to be like a games bar, but after the pinball machine, that was totally shut on.
Nothing.
That place was like
whatever.
This.
Yeah.
Yeah. Played a bit of cornhole.
I saw that. It was the most elaborate cornhole game I've ever seen. It had its own little section, and it was lit up.
It was like plugged in,
Yeah, so that's not what cornhole is.
Yeah, so if you don't know what cornhole is, why don't you explain what cornhole is?
Cornhole is, it's a little stand-up board. There's 2 of them on either side, although it looks like you just had one, which is kind of weird.
Yeah, we had one.
And there's a hole in it. Beanbags. Yeah, and you have different, so you usually play it with 4 people, so 2 on each side, and you have, I think it's 4 or 5 bean bags on your side, and you try and get them into the hole on the other side. So yeah, and you get points if you get them in the hole, or if you get 1 point if you get it on top of the board. Great American pastime at bonfires or weddings or out in the country somewhere.
The name cornhole is gross though.
It has another name too. What is it called?
I'm just going to call it whatever the other name is, because cornhole just sounds like another name for asshole. It should be called
I can't
beanbag aim or something.
Yeah, it's like bag toss. That's another name for it.
Again, bag toss. Like, it's just... Anyway. Yeah, so Poland is lovely. And do you know what? It was fucking really clean, really cheap. Nobody, like, harassed us in the street. Like, no one even came up to us. You know, like, when you're a tourist, people are like, hey, want to see this trick? Or, hey, want to buy this, like... Yeah. thing that sticks to a wall, and you're like, no, I just want to see the Trevi fountain.
Yeah.
Nothing. Like, everyone just left us alone. And we walked around at night, like nobody spoke to us. It was really lovely.
I'm glad you had a great time. What about Auschwitz?
Yeah, I did.
Auschwitz.
Oh God, yeah, it was so heavy. Yeah, there are no words. It's like indescribable.
Yeah.
It's so huge as well. You don't realize how big it is. There's like Auschwitz, and then there's Auschwitz 2 and Birkenau, which are like, so there's Auschwitz, the original camp, and then there's like another camp next to it. And then there's like another load of like crematoriums in the forest.
Wow.
Like, and we walked through, like one of the most interesting bits was there's I think I put it on the Instagram, but there's a gallows where they executed Rudolf Hess, who was the leader of all of the death camps. He ran away in 1945 when the war ended and like hid, I think, in either Spain or Italy. Can't remember. But they found him and they put him to trial, and then they sentenced him to death, and then they hung him in front of like the gas chambers. So that was really humbling to see.
Yeah.
And then we also went round I found out loads of things I didn't know, because I'm quite into like World War II and the Holocaust and like learning all about it. And so I'm one of those people that's like, I know everything. And so when I went there, I didn't realize that one of the exhibitions that like really shocked me was when the Russians liberated Auschwitz, they found 2 tons of human hair. Because obviously as soon as they arrived, they would shave their hair to obviously stop lice and just for ease of like cleanliness and stuff.
Which it didn't, by the way. I remember reading about that experience, and they still
I think it's just humiliation, to be honest.
Yeah, that too, for sure.
It's to strip you of your identity and humiliate you and stuff. But they saved the hair and turned it into textiles.
Oh.
And I'm like, what the fuck? And in there they've got like 2 tons of human hair on it as an exhibition.
Wow.
And they had like
2 tons.
And and it's, I can't even describe to you like how big it is, how much 2 tons of human hair looks like.
Yeah.
And they had piles, you know how in a lot of Holocaust exhibitions they have piles of like glasses and shoes and
I was just going to say that the Imperial War Museum in London has a really great exhibit on the Holocaust and World War II, and they have this whole, it's like a whole section of just shoes, people's shoes from maybe Auschwitz or one of the camps, and it really does show you like just the magnitude of
and that's
people.
Nothing. That's like none of it. That's like not even 1% of it, and it's still
fraction.
like holy fuck.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And this time when I walked, because I've seen piles of stuff before, and this time when I walked around, I was like, I'm going to try and focus on like one object in the pile to like really think about like who that was. Sure. And there's like some gorgeous like red leather shoes in there, and like gorgeous red, like little red leather like heels and stuff. And I thought to myself, they must have been wearing like their best shoes.
Yeah.
Because they said only bring what you can carry.
Right.
So they must have thought, well, fuck, these shoes are worth money, so I better take them with me.
Yeah. These are my favorite pair of shoes. I only wear them on special occasions. I'm not going to leave them behind.
Yeah, exactly. So it just made me like look at the shoes and think like all of these shoes were basically either people's only shoes or their best shoes.
Right.
And on all the suitcases, they had their names and address written because they thought that they would be reunited with it. Like the woman was explaining like how basically the SS explained to them that they were being resettled in the East.
Right. Yeah.
Not that they were being taken to a work camp.
Yeah.
So, and that's because people are easier to control when they're not panicking.
Right.
And it just reminded me of like loads of serial killers who say, I'm not going to kill you, I'm just kidnapping you. Or, you know, or I'm not going to rape you, I'm not going to kill you, I'm just taking you for ransom. To keep you calm, because people are so much easier to control that way. And it just really reminded me of that. Yeah. And it just makes you feel fucking sick. Like,
it does. It's the Nazis were just a group of serial killers.
Yeah. I just learned loads of stuff. Like she was explaining like how they use Cyclone B gas, and first of all they experimented on like prisoners of war, and some of them it took like 3 days for them to die because they didn't know how much to use. And then they were saying that once the people had died, they would go in and then take like their rings off them and stuff.
Yeah.
And take
I
off
remember
anything of value.
Yeah.
And also like the hair thing kind of reminded me of like, you know, when you kill an animal and it's like you should be respectful and use every piece of the animal. Like, you know, you should send like a pig's hooves to make soap or whatever.
Right. Right.
Or you should give pig's ears to dogs to chew. Like, it just kind of reminded me of how much they had reduced them to animals.
Yeah.
They were like,
and
well,
disrespect. Yeah.
It's like, well, we are killing them, but we're not wasting anything.
Right.
That's kind of the attitude that it reminded me of.
Right.
And it just made me feel fucking grim. And it was like, if you ever get a chance to go to a death camp, you should definitely go, because
it's important.
It's like nothing you've ever seen before.
Yeah, it's an important experience. It wasn't that long ago. It was in our grandparents' lifetime.
And it's still happening now in like China and in some parts of Africa. Like, there were genocides like not long ago. And also, like, I think most of all, it just made me feel so fucking lucky that I'm just born like in England, where I am, who I am, to a family that's nice to me.
Yeah.
And it's just pure chance that these people were born at the time they were born and where they were born.
Right. Yeah.
Like, the American Jews, like, weren't deported from America. It was the European Jews that were deported.
Yeah.
And taken to death camps. And it's literally just the luck of the draw.
Yeah.
Ultimately, it just made me feel very grateful, which I think is kind of the point of it.
Right. And to just remember, to be reminded, like, this is how horrible humans can be. Like, don't let it happen again.
Mm-hmm. Like, loads of the camps got destroyed, either by neo-Nazis or by, like, the SS themselves to try and hide evidence of what they were doing. But at Birkenau, there's one that's, like, half exploded with dynamite.
Oh,
because they knew that the war was over and that, like, retribution was coming. So they were trying to destroy the evidence as quickly as possible, but they didn't have time. So they did half of it and then were like, fuck it, just run. But she did tell a really amazing story, which we'll probably like end the Auschwitz chat on, which was in the gas chambers, they basically employed some of the... So when people arrived, they would separate them into women with children, the infirm and sick, people who couldn't work, and strong younger women and men that could work.
Right.
Literally, they would just point to the left or point to the right, and whatever queue you were in denoted where you were going, either to the death chamber or to work yourself to death. So they got some of those people to basically help with the gassing, and because they knew what was going on, every like month or so they would just shoot them and start again. And just choose new people. So there were Jewish girls, and they were working in the ammunition factory part of the camp, and they got loads of explosives and smuggled them to the people that were helping with the gassing chambers. And they let them, basically they just like suicide bombed themselves, took out half the gas chamber, and took out like 8 SS officers. So they killed themselves, but in that they stopped like loads of people being killed and killed loads of SS officers. And all the girls were hanged for it, but they were like, fuck it, we're gonna die anyway, so might as well
that
take
just gave me
people out with us. I know, right? It was such a good story. There must be like more on that story, so we should definitely find out.
For sure.
But yeah, the woman who was our guide was super interesting. Like, she had loads of stories like that. And she also told the story of the nurse that like snuck babies out of the ghetto.
Oh.
And they told that on My Favorite Murder. And
oh, really?
I was like, I know this story. Like, I know it already. And also, a couple of weeks ago, the guy that you told a story about, the guy who was in a hotel room and nobody knew how he died, and it was a stray bullet.
Oh, yeah.
Georgia told that on My Favorite Murder the other week.
Oh, man. They're listening to us. They're listening to us.
Guys, we know you're jealous, but just stop copying us.
It's a good story. That is a good story, though. Well, I'm glad that you had a good time in Poland and you got to have that experience going to Auschwitz. And yeah, it sounds like an amazing experience and important, and that you got to also have some fun going to Pinball Museum.
It really was a tale of two cities. Truly. Yeah, so have you been watching any crime shit recently?
Oh man, everyone is texting me about the Tinder documentary.
I even noted that down on my page. I knew you were going to say it. And people were like, have you seen this? I'm like that. Guys, the second it fucking comes out, it's in my eyeballs. Like, why are you even asking me? You know what the answer's going to be.
Oh, man. Yeah.
Please.
I haven't watched it yet. I just haven't had time. I haven't had time to watch anything these days.
Rachel,
I've just
you
been
make
so
time.
busy. I will make time today. But
this is
I'm
your
glad.
job now.
Thank you to everyone who's texted me about it and said how amazing it is. And if our listeners have watched it, then tell us what you think of it as well.
Well, I'll try not to, I won't do a spoiler, but honestly, they're just, I don't want to say that they're fucking morons, but I'm like, why and how is all I think during this whole thing. And I think it's because like I'm so cutthroat and unforgiving.
You are though.
My bullshitometer is just at 0 degrees.
I'm gonna watch it, Talicza, because maybe I'll have a different stance on it, and because you give him
the fucking money.
You are good at that.
I'm scared that you give him the money.
I'm scared too. Like. Okay, I'm going to watch it. Let's pause it from there and we'll pick it back up again next week. And if any listeners haven't watched it yet, watch it this week. We'll all be on the same page next week when we talk about it.
Okay. Yeah, definitely.
I did listen to a really good podcast because there's a movie that just came out on HBO called The Eyes of Tammy Faye. And
Ooh.
It's not a documentary, but it was based on a documentary. And Tammy Faye Baker was a televangelist. She was one of the beginning most popular, her and her husband, Jim Baker. And so The Eyes of Tammy Faye has Jessica Chastain and Andrew Garfield playing Jim and Tammy Baker.
He's a good chap.
He is, yeah. He's a good actor. So I listened to this podcast that my friend recommended to me. It's called You're Wrong About. Have you listened to that podcast at all?
No.
So You're Wrong About does actually touch a lot on different true crime things. It's not always true crime, but they always land on how the patriarchy and corporate, it's always due to that. Whatever happens, it's always down to a man in power. Yeah. And so they do a whole episode on Tammy Faye and Jim Baker. And wow, I had no idea how much of a horrible person Jim Baker is. You have to listen to it and then you have to watch the movie. Talicza, I am recommending it to you because he's an evil person and he's on TV today. He's old, but he's a televangelist today. He's on TV.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's all I'm going to say. I want people to listen to it. I want you to listen to it. I want you to watch the movie and tell me your thoughts. We all have homework for next week.
Done deal. I watched a HBO documentary because I had like time on my own in the house. Like Carly had gone out and Tom hadn't arrived yet. And I was like, right, time to get dug into the HBO documentaries.
Yes.
And there's one called A Dangerous Son. Have you ever watched it?
I don't think so. No.
So it's a HBO documentary and it came out in about 2018. So it's kind of old. But basically, if you've ever seen that Louis Theroux documentary, Medicated Kids, it's very similar to that.
Okay.
And it's basically got kids in it and they just happen to all be boys. It's called Dangerous Sons. That was a stupid thing to say, but it's it wasn't called Dangerous Child. But it's basically mothers who have sons who have like really bad behavioral problems.
Okay. Yeah.
And it's just like, I decided that I don't want kids like very recently. I've just decided I'm not going to do that. And it's quite like a freeing decision to just know what you want.
Yeah.
And so now I'm watching these things going, thank God it's definitely not for me. It's Because it's like, you don't know what you're going to get. It's a total lottery. Like,
yeah, that's true.
You could give birth to Ted Bundy. So there's these kids on there, and like, oh my God, they're just awful. They're horrible. Like this kid in the back of a car, and he has to go and live in a residential school, and he's like pulling his mum's hair while she's driving, and like calling her a fucking bitch and stuff. And I'm just like, oh God, it's a bit car crash TV, but it's so good. It's like really good one to watch.
Wow, I can't wait to watch that bundle of joy.
I watch the darkest, most depressing shit that is available. So if anyone has anything that they felt really bummed out after watching, then let me know, because I am interested. So, Rach, do you want to explain our theme?
Yeah, speaking of bummed out stories, let's talk about our theme this week.
Here we go.
So this week we've decided to go around the world. So last week we talked about Poland and Ireland. Next week we're going to do Australia. And this week we decided to do South America. So I started to do my story, and then last minute I changed it because I found this other story and I couldn't pass it up. I hate it and I love it. Because I get so excited about the new story and I finish it faster.
If you've got something better, then defo go with your heart on this one.
We're going to go to Mexico.
Yes.
Am I first? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, are you though? I think something's got fucked up here. Because didn't I do Carol Cott last week? Oh, do you know what, Rachel? It just doesn't matter. Like, no one cares.
No one cares.
No one cares.
I'll just do it.
Your slot's green, so you're going first. That's how this spreadsheet works.
All right, I'll go
Doesn't
first.
Matter.
So, yeah, we're going to Mexico, 1940s. So, Magdalena Solís was born in Tamaulipas, Mexico in 1947. Her exact birth date is unknown. Some say that she could have been born much earlier in the 30s.
Is she doing the old line about her age thing? A lady never tells her age.
Possibly. I think she was born in like a very poor area where things weren't documented, and she was just left to her own devices, and nobody gave a shit about her.
I think even in really early England, unless you were christened, nobody knew your date of birth.
Yeah.
You didn't register the baby's birth, you registered its christening.
Yeah. So if she was just born and then grew up with a couple of siblings and didn't go to school even, then no one would know. No one would know if she was 5 or 10 or what. So that was her childhood. She grew up in a poor family, and it was apparently very dysfunctional. I don't know how many siblings she had, but she had at least one.
Okay.
At a young age, she began sex work, and it was most likely fostered by her older brother, who was apparently her pimp.
Oh, that's nice for her.
Yeah. Family business.
Yep.
She also posed as a fortune teller and a medium, claiming that she could channel spirits of the dead. So this is going to influence later on. But it just kind of shows...
Pimped out.
Yeah, it just kind of shows that she wasn't just... she was a little bit of a trickster, you know? She wasn't like a... You know, I don't want to say like she wasn't like a pushover and just did what her brother
she wasn't
told
super
her
naive.
To. Yeah, she got into the game as a child and started doing tricks with her brother. So, in 1963, so if she was born in 47 and it's 1963, then she's still a teenager. 1963, she's still working with her brother on the streets, doing sex work and pretending to be a fortune teller. And the two of them meet another pair of siblings called the Hernandez Brothers. They came from like rural Mexico in the middle of nowhere. Actually, I don't know like where they were actually born, but they had come to their town and they ended up joining their sect. They had a sect, a cult.
Okay.
So a little bit about the Hernandez Brothers cult. Yes.
Okay.
In late 1962, two brothers, Santos and Cayetano Hernandez, who were petty scammers and down on their luck, decided that they needed money quick, so they put together a plan. They traveled to the isolated community of Yerba Buena, which is like the middle of Mexico, the middle of nowhere, a little bit south, not near any big cities or anything.
Mm-hmm.
It was a poor and mostly illiterate village of about 50 inhabitants. They had no electricity, no telephones. Remember, this is the 60s, so that was a normal thing by then. Okay, so the brothers proclaimed themselves as prophets and high priests of, in quotes, the powerful and exiled Inca gods. They proclaimed that the Inca gods, in exchange for worship and tributes, would grant the village hidden treasures in the caves of the mountains surrounding the town, and that they would soon come to claim authority over their ancient kingdom and punish the non-believers. So that's what the Hernandez brothers came to this small village and told the inhabitants.
Okay.
However, the brothers were ignorant, as the Incas did not inhabit Mexico, but the Incas actually came from Peru, like historically.
Yeah.
So they just came with this story, and it wasn't true at all. There was no correlation to that area and the Incas.
But I suppose if you don't have any education, like if you're not a fucking historian, you might not know that. Good ruse.
You don't really read. You don't talk to other people from other towns. You're not gonna...
Friends with archaeologists. You just fucking living your life.
How many archaeologist friends do you have, Talicza?
I actually have... slept... Well, I fucked one, but he ended up being a Tory, so that was horrible.
No. Oh, man.
I was like, God, this guy's interesting. And then I was like, did you vote Brexit by any chance? And he was like, well, yeah. And I was like, oh, no.
Oh.
And then immediately broke up with him.
Oh,
God.
Man, that could have been so interesting. That could have been...
It's like you fucking someone and then finding out that they're a Trump supporter.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
How upset would you be at that?
I'd be like, why?
Also, don't you think that was information I would have liked to have been privy to before I engaged in any kind of sexual activity with you?
I would think so, yeah. Find out someone's political and moral stance before you sleep with them.
Well, I do now.
Anyways,
a
back
life
to
lesson for us all.
Yeah. Okay, so the Hernandez brothers, they were still ignorant. However, the residents of Yerba Buena, that's the little village that they came to and told everyone, believed them, and so their cult solidified and grew. They practiced rituals involving psychoactive drugs and sex and demanded economic payments from their members, and they even sold some members as sexual slaves. So I think that they were convincing these villagers with drugs that things were happening.
You can convince people of a lot with psychoactive drugs.
If someone slipped me mushrooms and then told me a story and I had no education,
like frame of reference,
I'm sure I would have believed them wholeheartedly.
Also, this isn't just like mushrooms. This is like fucking, what is that stuff called? Peyote? That
Peyote?
Stuff that's that people, it's like a leaf or something, or like a drink, and then they like chew it, and then they're like on a trip for like 3 days, and they can't stop throwing up. White people go and do it.
I think that happens to some people. Yeah,
like white people go and do it, and they're like, "Oh, it changed my life," like all this shit. And it's like, no, it's part of like ancient fucking rituals that are nothing to do with you. They got some strong fucking psychoactive drugs out there.
Yeah, and they had marijuana, and this is Mexico, so all of that is around, and it's the 60s again. It's the time when psychoactive drugs was becoming more available.
Yeah.
Okay. So they're selling people as sexual slaves, all for the promise of gold held in the caves where they performed the rituals. So they were telling the members that there was gold around in these caves, and that if they did the rituals, then they would find the gold and all would prosper.
Show me the gold, then I might give you a blowy. Then we'll see how it goes. But I'm not just going to, like, take your word for it.
Well, again, they gave them drugs. Yeah, I'm just thinking by way of mushrooms. If someone gave me mushrooms and then was like, look at this beautiful rock, it's actually gold, I'd probably believe them.
Yeah.
About a year into their reign as cult leaders, the members began to grow skeptical when certain promises for economic growth and prosperity were not being met by the high priests.
Good.
Yeah, they're getting wind of some truth.
I ain't seeing any gold, and
no.
I am
in fact
fucking people left, right, and center.
Some things seem a little worse. Yeah. Some things seem a little worse than what it was before you guys got here. So the two brothers devised a plan. They told the villagers that they would travel to the mountaintops to pray. Instead, they would travel to the northern part of Mexico, to Monterrey, in search of sex workers who would help in convincing their followers that their proclamations were real. And also, this is like, they went away to Monterrey from Yerba Buena. It's like a 3-day car journey today. So I don't know how long it took them. But I think that they were just like, we need to go somewhere where nobody knows where these people came from.
Yeah.
So they go to Monterrey. There they found Magdalena Solís and her brother Eleazar. And it is believed that Magdalena was around 18 years old at this point.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not sure if the Hernandez brothers convinced Magdalena and Eleazar that they were real, like that they were these high priests, or if they convinced them to just like join them in this trick in tricking the villagers. So
yeah,
the two agreed to join the brothers back to Yerba Buena. The Hernandez brothers introduced Magdalena to the sect during one of their cave rituals. They used a smoke screen to bring her in as the reincarnation of Inca goddess Cotlicu. Cotlicu was an Aztec goddess known as the mother of the gods and goddess of the sun, moon, and stars. Obviously, because of their like little smoke screen trick, then the villagers believed that she was real. As soon as she was accepted by the villagers, she became a powerful high priestess figure, with the Hernandez brothers and her own brother Eleazar acting in subservience to her. So she
that must have been good.
Top. Yeah.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, she herself began falling into delusions, and she started to believe that she really was the reincarnate of Cotlicu. She began taking the rituals too far. At one point, 2 members of the cult began to complain that the sexual practices that they had to partake in, including cave orgies and forced sex with other members.
Cave orgies?
Yeah, they would go out into the cave and just have orgies. And
I bet that goes on in California now.
I don't really know where there's any caves in California. But yeah, I feel like this was also happening in the 60s in California, which is kind of weird. That it was like, people didn't know about this stuff, but it was happening in different parts of the world at the same time.
I mean, it's not my cup of tea, but have I...
I mean, you could talk about like how it was the end of World War II and people were just in a different mindset and needed to follow something or be a part of a community, or
it's the breakdown of the nuclear family, like the invention of the contraceptive pill,
drugs,
women having more freedoms, drugs,
right?
And I guess that kind of was like a bit of a global thing.
Yeah,
but mainly the drugs, I'm assuming. Some drugs make you horny, like it might have just been like one of those kind of things.
Yeah, just passing that around. Yeah, so these 2 cult members, they were complaining. They were like, these rituals aren't working. We're not finding gold. We're not finding riches, as promised.
I'm exhausted
by the
from the cave orgies.
Yeah.
I can't fuck anymore.
I've seen too much skin in the past month of my life. I just want a nap.
Where's my gold?
Yeah, where is my gold? So when the two members, they were tired, they were planning to leave the cult. Magdalena found out, and she held a trial, in quotes, where the members were charged with betraying her and the other high priests, which when I mention the high priests, it's just the Hernandez brothers and Magdalena's brothers.
Two little wieners.
Yeah. So those two members were sentenced to death, and terrified by Magdalena's power over the sect, the rest of the believers were convinced to hang the two members. So by this point,
oh dear,
the other cult members were they were really scared of Magdalena because they thought that she was a witch.
Well, that escalated quickly.
Yeah, it did. So after those two murders, Magdalena's descent into power and madness progressed. Her ideas evolved as she grew bored with the regular cave orgies. This was from an article that I read. Like, she was just getting bored with what was going on in the cave. And she was like, you know what? We need to amp this up. So she began to demand human sacrifice.
Whoa, you're taking the Inca thing too far.
Yeah.
Do you know what, though, Rachel? If I had any chance to be the head of a cult, I'd turn into Magdalena. I'd be like, you pissed me off once, you're dead. I don't know why I'm acting shocked at what she's up to. Like, it's me. It's Mexican me.
And she was probably way more angry than either of us have ever been. She's been in sex work since she was a child. So imagine all of that anger just bubbling up. And you start to think that you're this... Yeah, you're this high priestess, witch, reincarnate of an Inca god.
Just faked it till she's made it.
Yep.
And she's like, you know what? I am a fucking goddess. You're dead.
Yeah. Okay, but she takes it a step further. It's not just like human sacrifice, like kill them and they're done. She devised a blood ritual. Here's what would happen. The sacrifice was brutally beaten, burned, cut, and maimed by all the members of the cult. Thereafter, she practiced bloodletting, where the victim was made to bleed to death. The blood was deposited into a cup mixed with chicken blood, and Magdalena drank from the chalice and then gave the drink to the other high priests. And finally, they would pass it around to the other members. And she was convinced, and she convinced everyone else, that this gave them supernatural powers. So after she decided to do that, they did that for the next 6 weeks in 1963. And they always used a member of the cult that was rumored to want to leave. So it was a punishment, two, like a fear factor.
Yeah.
So other members wouldn't leave.
Intimidation.
And 3, it was like part of this weird ritual. Like, we're going to find gold at some point, so we have to do this now. So
seems like it's not worth it at this point.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of effort for no results.
I'll be like, look, how much gold? Because right now, I kind of miss Jerry. Like, I thought Jerry was a cool guy, and now he said one thing about leaving, and now we're just burning him to death. Like, it's just, how much gold?
He had funny jokes, and now we gotta kill him, man. All right, I guess we will.
You'd so be doing that thing where like you pretend to drink something and you just like keep your lips closed, but put the cup to your mouth and go,
Get a little bit on your lips.
Pass it on, yeah.
So they start doing that. 4 more people were murdered in these rituals, with one of the later rituals involving Magdalena removing the heart while the victim was still alive. So she just keeps amping it up. One step further.
Shit. That is an Inca thing though, isn't it?
I think they did, yeah.
I can't remember.
In Apocalypto?
That is the fucking film. Exactly the film I was about to say. Isn't that Mel Gibson?
Great movie.
It's a really good film. But isn't it Mel Gibson that directed it? Which kind of bums it out a bit. Yeah.
Yes. It's really depressing because he is a good director, and that story, that film is so well made because they use I'm sorry for not using the right language, but it's like Aztec ancient language that they are speaking in the film.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. It's completely subtitled, isn't it? It's not.
Yeah. And there's barely any talk.
There's barely any dialogue. And it's like
Which
an hour and something long, and it's not boring in any way whatsoever.
Right. Which is just, that is a testament to a good film. If you don't need that much dialogue, then it's a good movie. And you could keep,
Quentin Tarantino. Listen up.
Yeah. What's his name that did Before Sunset?
Wes Anderson?
No, not. Anyways, back to murder.
Sorry.
Maybe I'll start a movie podcast where I talk about movies, but in the meantime, we're talking about murder. So at that point, when she decides to remove the heart of a victim while they're still alive. So here is what happens while that is going on.
Jeez.
On an early evening in May 1963, 14-year-old local resident Sebastian Guerrero was exploring near the caves where Magdalena and her cult was performing their rites. Attracted by the lights and noises coming out of one of the caves, Sebastian got closer to investigate, where he just saw a terrible sight.
Mm-hmm.
And I took this from an article on Medium, and it's called Magdalena Solís, the High Priestess of Blood. And they describe what he saw. So inside the large cavern, most of the villagers were gathered. Many of them were nude, engaging in sex. Others were passing around a ceremonial chalice, drinking the dark fluid it contained. And this is what 14-year-old Sebastian, he's seeing all of this. At the far end of the cave, upon an elaborate altar, Sebastian saw where the dark fluid came from, a human being hacked to pieces, the final drops of his blood being collected in chalices. Standing above them all was a woman, Magdalena Solís, holding the bleeding heart of the man who was lying on the altar. Terrified, Sebastian ran more than 15 miles back to the town of Villagran. Yeah.
That's so
15
long.
miles.
It's like half a marathon.
It is half a marathon. I didn't think about that. Although when you're 14, you're just running all day. You got that energy.
Yeah, I could run half a marathon when I was 14, yeah. for anything.
And you've got that adrenaline after seeing this, so it probably took him half the time. Well, here's what happened. So you're kind of right, Talicza. So he ran to the closest police station, which was 15 miles away in Villagran. There, he breathlessly tried to explain what he saw, saying that the villagers were drinking blood like vampires. Obviously, the officers there, they laughed at him, 14 years old, middle of the night, because he just ran 15 miles after seeing this. They thought maybe he was on drugs. The next morning, however, an officer, investigator Luis Martinez, escorted Sebastian home. But in the process, Sebastian convinced him that something terrible was happening. And so he convinced Officer Martinez to go out and see, just check it out.
You've got a car. 15 miles is nothing, and it couldn't hurt to look.
Yeah. So the two went out there. Martinez agreed to follow Sebastian to the area. That was the last day that Sebastian and Louise were seen alive.
Shut the fuck up. Oh my God. What a twist.
Yep. So they disappear. After this.
No wonder you swap stories.
Yeah.
Oh my God. This could be
After
a film.
It probably, I'm sure it's probably a film in South America, like a South American film. I should look it up.
Yeah.
So Luis Martinez, it sounds like he listened to this kid. He sounds like a good guy. He was probably a great officer. And he was like, okay, I will come out with you. So he's probably loved by the rest of the people that he worked for. And Sebastian, he was just a 14-year-old kid. So obviously everyone in that town was like, where are they? You need to find them. So the police start to take it more seriously, and they start to look into that area.
Mm-hmm.
Where there were also, once they started looking into it, they've heard rumors of a satanic cult where there were disappearances of members and other people of that village. So the police were like, all right, this is serious.
Yeah.
So On May 31st, 1963, police, in conjunction with the army, deployed an operation in Yerba Buena. Eleazar and Magdalena Solís were arrested on a farm in the town in possession of considerable amounts of marijuana. And they were arrested. It was pretty quick. But the two brothers, the Hernandez brothers, they wanted to go out in a blaze of glory, and they convinced the other cult members to start shooting at the police. So there was a little bit of gunfire. Santos Hernandez was shot by police while he was resisting arrest. And Cayetano, actually, I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name right, Cayetano or Cayetano, I'm not sure. He was assassinated by a crazy member of the cult called Jesus Rubio, who before the crisis...
he's the crazy one. Like, the rest are fine. Fucking hell.
Well, the rest... What's he up to? You know, the Hernandez brothers were like, this was all a scam, but I'm sure they attracted some crazy cult members who were like, yeah, this is real.
How do you out crazy the whole of the crazy cult?
Jesus Rubio, he wanted to be part of the high priests, and he never was. So in the middle of all this gunfire, Jesus Rubio just shot Cayetano Hernandez, so he died as well. So the two Hernandez brothers just died in that gunfire. Okay. So investigation followed in that area, and police found the carved up bodies of Sebastian Guerrero and Luis Martinez near a farm where the Solís siblings were arrested. They had removed their hearts in the style of the sacrifices that they were doing.
Literally just in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Yeah, they were trying to do good. And the Magdalena and her brother and everyone else were like,
poor little bastard.
It sounds like a horror movie. It sounds like The Hills Have Eyes.
It does. It reminds me of Midsummer. Have you seen that?
I haven't, but that's why I haven't watched it yet.
Because it's fucking horrible.
Like, yeah, I've heard that.
I'm never watching that again. I've watched it once and I'm not watching it again.
Yeah, that director Ladder, as well.
Right up there.
He makes really messed up movies. Anyways, So they found the bodies of Sebastian and Luis Martinez. Then they found other bodies, also dismembered, of 6 persons, and they were kind of scattered around in the vicinity of the caves that they were doing the rituals. So trials went pretty quickly. This all happened in May. Magdalena and Eleazar were put on trial shortly after on June 13th, 1963, where they were sentenced to 50 years in prison for the murder of Sebastian and Luis. Authorities couldn't
there's no death penalty right now.
In Mexico, I'm not sure, actually. I don't know.
Okay.
But it sounds like there wasn't.
Yeah.
Authorities couldn't prove Magdalena's guilt in the 6 other murders because surviving members refused to testify against them.
She's so scary.
She is. There's only one picture of her, too. We'll post it.
I want to see it. Yeah.
So 12 other members of the cult were given 30-year sentences for their parts in the rituals, and also probably because they wouldn't tell on Magdalena.
Still scared.
They were loyal to her.
Yeah.
Though the remains of 8 people were found, it was suspected that the cult may have murdered up to 16 people. It isn't known what happened to Magdalena Solís. She would have been released in 2013. However, some reports state that she may have died in prison. And that is the story of Magdalena Solís in Mexico.
Oh my God, Rach, you knocked it out of the park this week.
Yeah, this is why I changed my story.
Like, that is like fucking nightmare fuel. It got everything.
Yes.
It's got fucking sex, drugs, murder, cults,
witches,
witchcraft,
blood, drinking blood, vampires,
cutting hearts out of people. You've hit every fucking everything. That was crazy.
Yeah.
Mine's just like normal serial killer. I'm kind of sad to follow you with that, but
I did almost do a serial killer, and then when I came across Magdalena, I was like, nope, this is it. This is who I'm doing.
I really want to know what is she hot? Is she like...
I'll show you. I'll flip the camera around.
Yeah.
You see it?
I mean, she's okay.
Yeah.
She kind of looks Incan.
She does. And I can totally imagine her with like, drawings on her face. She has very piercing eyes.
She's got really flat, high cheekbones.
Yes.
Yeah, she's looks
pretty.
Incan.
Yeah.
She is pretty. And if she said, I am the incarnation of an Incan goddess, that's believable.
And she's got like conviction in her. Like she's speaking with confidence. Probably in that village, women were subservient. So
yeah, I would
for
imagine so.
A woman to come in and with the smoke screen and shouting at people, it was like, whoa, she is a god.
And
goddess. Yes.
And like most of the time, like that kind of ruse is based on the pure confidence of the trickster.
Yes.
Like, is Darren Brown quite big in America or not?
Not really. He's not really known. So why don't you explain who he is?
Yeah. So if you don't know him, he's amazing, right? He's a bit like David Blaine.
Yes.
But
not as creepy.
He's not as creepy at all. Like he's really down to earth, and he basically explains to people like, this is not magic. I'm good at cold reading people. Yeah. I'm good at psychology. He does like loads of and subliminal messaging and picking up on like reactions in your face and stuff. And he basically does stuff like he teaches somebody to count cards, or he goes up to like a bookies. Like a betting shop, and he goes to the woman, this is the winning ticket, and she's like, okay, gives him the money even though it's not a winning ticket, but it's just his pure fucking confidence that and the way he looks at people that he gets away with it. And it kind of reminds me of that. She looks like she has got Darren Brown powers. She could say something here, you go, okay, you're right,
here's all my money.
She's got the old Manson lamps.
Yes.
Okay, so that was fucking amazing, and that's really fascinated me, and I'm going to look into it a bit more.
Yeah, definitely.
And if they haven't made a movie about it, Rach, I think that's your new job, or at least a documentary.
I will write the script. Yeah, all right.
I know that you're like really. I know you're really busy and you have a life, but like what I like to do is tell people what they need to do to make their lives better whilst making almost zero effort in my own. That's kind of my thing. Like a life coach, but completely unqualified. Like Jez in Peep Show. Like, listen, I can make your life better. You just really need to concentrate on your documentary making right now. Yeah. And you're like, there's a rat in my house and I do a podcast with you, you cheeky bitch.
I have to make money. I have to live and pay rent and buy food.
No. Look, listen, Rachel.
All right. No problem, Talicza.
Okay. Yeah, sure, whatever. Okay, so you're like, yeah, crack on. So so my story is about a guy from Chile.
Okay.
Which
yes,
I didn't realize is one of those weird countries, a bit like Croatia. So if you look up Croatia on a map, it borders Bosnia, and it's just stolen all of the coast.
Yeah.
So like
all the pretty parts.
Yeah, it's like, then there's like a meme that's like, all of the Bosnians, can we go to the beach? Croatians, I don't think so. They've just like crossed off all of the beach bit that Bosnia would have literally had next to them.
Go.
No, and you cannot have any sun cream.
No.
Not happening. And that is exactly what Chile does. It's just on the edge, all along the edge of South America. Like, it's like it borders Bolivia, and like Bolivia doesn't touch the sea. Chile just steals all the beaches. So it just makes me laugh.
Sorry, Bolivia.
Soz Bolivs, no beach for you. So Julio Pérez Silva was born on the 15th of July in 1963. So it's kind of happening at the same time.
Oh, wow. Okay.
In the town of Alto Hospicio, which I think is how you say it, which is a small mining town in the city of Iquique.
Okay.
In the, I've really done myself here, in the Tarapacá region of Chile.
Okay.
It's the second most northern region of Chile, and it borders Bolivia to the east and the South Pacific Ocean to the west.
Right.
So, like I said,
Right at
if
the
you
top.
think of South America, all of the edge of it is Chile. And despite being coastal, the region is mostly desert. So they're quite poor in this part where he's born, and there's just not like a lot going on.
Yeah.
So Julia was known as I read this right, and I don't know why I included it, but Julia was known as Segura as a child, and I tried Googling that, and I have no clue what it means in Spanish. So if anyone knows what it means in Spanish and wants to let me know, then please do.
How do you spell it?
Segua. Because I'm thinking it might be a nickname that means something, but I don't know what it means.
Yeah.
So if anyone wants to let me know, then I'd be really interested. So he was a quiet and introverted child, but he did well at school. And then he got married in 1984 or 1985, we're not sure, when he was 22, to a lady called Monica Sistemas.
Okay.
They had 2 daughters, but the marriage fell apart. And he then moved on to a relationship with a lady called Marianela Vergara and became stepfather to her 2 daughters. They moved to Puchuncavi, which is in the middle of the country.
Yeah.
And he had a good reputation as a caring husband. So he basically like fucked off his old wife and his old kids and just started again in the middle of the country. So they were together, him and Monica, for 5 years. And then in the mid-1990s, he decided he was just going to relocate and get a better paying job. So it doesn't say if he's still with Monica, but I don't think he is. I think he just leaves.
Yeah.
So he headed for Iquique, or Iquique, or however you say it, which is in the same region in which he was born, North Chile.
Okay.
And he started working for a company loading sacks of salt. Because it seems like this region of the world has lots of natural resources.
Yeah,
like
it's a mining town,
silver,
mining towns,
salt.
Yeah,
they have loads of stuff like that going on. Right. So it paid well. And then single again, he went to a party and he met Nancy Borreo. She was 14 years older than him, and she had 6 children of her own.
Wow.
And in just 2 weeks, he moved in with her and settled in Alto Hospicio. So I just think like massive red flag. I'm not going to name names, but like I've got friends and their boyfriends have moved in with them really quickly. And I think that means either they don't have a house that they have to give notice on, or they live with their parents. Both red flags.
They just want to move into wanting to be taken care of.
They just want to move in. They can't find a house on their own. To fucking live.
Yeah.
Like they're kind of using you for housing. But like I think like men are quite good at framing that in a romantic sense. Like, oh my God, I just want to wake up next to you every day.
Yeah.
And it's like, rather than in my car.
I've definitely been there. Yeah.
So he did that. Again, and that's like on the psychopath scale, isn't it?
Right.
People live a parasitic lifestyle. That's one of the ticks on the psychopath test.
Yeah. You know what? He was probably also he was like, you have 6 kids, you need a man around the house to help take care of them or provide for them. And she was like, yeah, I do. That sounds great.
She seems to be doing fine on her own, but this guy, I've seen a picture of him and he's not awful looking.
Okay.
Like he's quite good looking in a way.
Yeah.
So anyway, they moved around the region, and in the end he got sick of the salt mine job and he decided to invent his own job as being an illegal taxi driver. So,
okay.
Which, like, I have gotten into illegal taxis before in London, like, because I was a fucking idiot and they were cheap. So
they are a lot cheaper.
This happens everywhere. So this, unfortunately, gave him access to vulnerable girls and women in a locked car, which is no good.
How old is he at this point? It's the 80s. It's the mid 80s, right? So he's like late 20s.
This is the mid 1990s, so he's in like his 30s.
Oh, okay. All right.
Because he was born in 63, so in 93 he'd be 30.
Yeah.
So he's 30 something. Yeah. So I'm sorry. What I was going to say was, quick side note. when we were in Poland, right, there was this thing called the Executioners Museum. And I was like, oh, that sounds pretty fun. Like, I want to do that. So Carly was in a really bad... Well, my kind of fun. Well, Carly was in a really bad mood because she started her period and, like, had just bled on her new tights, and she was like, we couldn't find the place, and it was freezing and like starting to snow, and she was just like, for the love of God, just find the fucking museum. So like we got there, and it was like in a side alley, and it was locked, like the gates were locked, because it was like gates, and then you go down the stairs to the door, and she was like, oh, I'll just go through, and I was like, no, it's locked with a padlock, and she was like, oh, like looked really annoyed, and I was like, maybe they're just closed today. Like, I'll call them, because some museums are closed on random days. I was like, I'll just call them and see if they're, because all Polish people speak perfect English, pretty much. I was like, I'll call the number and I'll find out when it's open. And I called, and I'm not joking, the most drunk and the most hungover / sleepy Polish man answered and went, hello. And I was like, hi, we're just outside the museum, and like we're just wondering what time you open, or if you open tomorrow. And he's like, I'll be there in half an hour. And we were like, no, God, no, don't get up,
don't do this for us.
No. And he was like, how many of you? And I was like, 2. And he was like, okay, I'll be there in half an hour. I was like, no. I was like, then I put the phone down, and then I thought, right, so okay, drunk Polish man gets up, comes and lets us into the Executioners Museum, which is full of like scythes and axes, and I'm like, no. And I was like, oh God, no. And then I called back in the most British way, going, hiya, just wanted to say, don't worry about coming down, we're gonna do it another day, okay, bye. And I was just like, and then Carly looked even more annoyed, so I had to take her for a drink and get some vodka. But I was like, I was like, I'm sorry to bum you out, but I don't want to be in like a room with one drunk Polish man and a load of scythes. Yeah. Like, and like fucking, what are those things called that's just like a ball on the end of a chain? Like, I don't know the name of it.
Yeah, a ball and chain, isn't that just what it's called?
Know. I was like, I don't want to be in like a room full of axes and knives and stuff. And
with one man just seething that he has to be there in a cold room with 2 British girls.
Got him up for it. And then like when we read further into the reviews, and someone said, oh yeah, it works out about £6 and it's just one room. And the owner just stands there while you look around. And I was like, that would have been the worst thing ever.
Wow.
I was like, thank fuck we rang him and told him not to bother.
Yeah. That sounds so awkward and unpleasant. I'm glad you didn't do it.
So am I. I would never have come back. Okay. So on with the story. In 1998, on September the 17th, Montserrat Griselia Saravia flagged him down and got into his car. She was just 17. Okay. So this is, obviously, she didn't live to tell the tale, but according to him, she offered him money in exchange for sex. He also claimed she was trying to steal from him, both of which seem extremely unlikely. Yeah. She's 17. She's not going to pimp herself out to you, and she's not going to... She's asking if you'll fuck her for money.
Right.
When has that ever happened?
You. What?
I want to know when that's ever happened in the history of time. Like, ever.
A 17-year-old woman... woman
pays
a 30-year-old
man taxi driver for a fuck. Didn't happen. No. Right?
Never happened in the history of life.
And she was trying to steal from him. Well, you're in the front and she's in the back, and you're stronger than her. So, again, unlikely. Whatever really happened in the car, he beat her to death, left her on the beach, and drove away.
Oh, okay.
So it's just his word for it, basically. We don't actually know what happened. But the next November, the 24th, in 1999, he spotted 13-year-old Macarena Sanchez and offered her a lift to school. Thinking that he was just a normal taxi driver, she happily got in. And as soon as she did, he threatened her with a knife and tied her hands. He then raped her and threw her into a 220-meter abandoned silver mine called the Hantiyaya Peak.
Oh,
so
that sounds terrifying.
And I've Googled the picture of the mines.
He threw her body in there? She was dead, or she was alive and she was thrown in there?
No, she was dead.
Okay.
But yeah, I've Googled the mines, and yeah, it kind of reminds me of that story of I can't remember her name now. She's called Susan something, and her husband's called Josh, and they all think that he killed her and threw her into a mine, and basically like
yes,
you know how I mean?
Very familiar. Yes.
And the thing is, it's such a twisty story that I don't want to reveal the end, because like you're like, holy shit, like when you find out the end. But basically in the middle of the night he leaves in a snowstorm and says that he's taking the kids camping.
Yeah. Yes. And didn't he make a bunch of videos as well? Like he did like vlogs and stuff. Yes.
Yeah. We need to remember the name of all of that shit, but that is one of the best crime stories I've ever heard. Not best crime stories, but like most twisty and deep stories.
Yeah.
So it was just 3 months later, in February 2000, when Julio picked up 2 separate victims, took them to the middle of the desert just 2 days apart, and killed them. The first was Sara Gomez on February the 21st, and on the 23rd of February, a 23-year-old cell phone promoter, Angelica Lay. On March 23rd of the same year, so they're getting closer together, these murders, he picked up 14-year-old Laura Zola, raped and killed her, and dumped her body in the mines, just like the first victim.
Yeah.
His murders then increased in frequency again, as with most serial killers, and just 12 days after Laura, on the 5th of April, he attacked, raped, and murdered Catherine Lace and took her body to an unofficial garbage dump.
Wow.
And then so this is March, so he's murdered in February, March, April, and then on May the 22nd, Julio Silva kidnapped 17-year-old Patricia Palmer as she left her high school on her way home. He raped and killed her and left her body in the same abandoned mine as Sanchez and Zola. Less than a week later, on June the 2nd, he raped and murdered. This is just fucking prolific. Like,
yeah, he's reckless.
And it's not a big area. Like and all of these girls are going missing. So he raped Macarena Montesinos, who he also took to the unofficial garbage dump.
Okay.
But luckily at this point, his luck started to run out, because he raped and murdered a 15-year-old called Viviana Gray. Her father, Orlando, was convinced that there was a serial killer on the streets and tried to get together with the other missing girl's family and start looking for clues.
Where's the authorities in all this? Like, it's pretty obvious that something is happening at least once a month.
What do you think they say?
Though they probably ran away. Is that what?
Yes.
Okay.
Bingo.
All right.
Nailed it. So the police at the time accused nearly all the victims of being runaways or going away to be sex workers and looking for a better life in Bolivia or Peru because they were from poor families. So the police were like, fuck them. Orlando, however, never gave up. This is so sweet. So fucking clench for this. Like, he sold his fishing boat so he could raise money to look for his daughter and the other girls.
Oh,
my heart.
Wow.
Thank you, Dad. The family members of other victims found several clues on their own. This is outrageous.
Yeah.
Right?
Angering.
So on July the 8th, and this is the year 2000. This isn't the 60s. This is like fairly recent history. So on July the 18th, 2000, Viviana's clothes were found in a bag on a rubbish dump. So there's people picking through a rubbish dump and they find her clothes.
Yeah.
According to her family, Viviana would never have gone there. Like, what the fuck business has she got at a rubbish dump?
She's a high schooler. Why would she?
Yeah. So in another landfill, Catherine Akers' backpack and uniform were also found during a search by friends and neighbours. And then on July 20th, Patricia Palmer's underwear was found in a ravine by her mother.
Oh, man.
So they found all of this shit. And while this was going on,
these are like horrifying discoveries by family members when the police should have been discovering these things, and
they're not even looking. Yeah, they're not even looking.
Yeah.
They're just brushing people off and going, nah, they ran away. So this actually put Julio Silva off, and he laid low for 9 months.
Oh,
because he was like, shit,
yeah,
they're after me.
People were talking about it.
Yeah, he knew that someone was on his case, namely
Orlando.
Such a cool name.
Yeah.
However, it really is. However, on April the 17th, 2001, he picked up a schoolgirl whose age was unknown called Martiza. He threatened her with a knife and raped her, but she got away alive.
Oh, good job.
I know, right? She went to hospital and had a sample of his semen taken during an exam.
Wow.
So they now have a sample of an attacker. And they have somebody who can describe him, which is good. Yes. So 6 months later, on October the 4th, 2001, 13-year-old Barbarita Nunez survived an attack by Silva. He'd picked her up and raped her as he did with the rest of the girls, but for some reason he was talking to her and he told her that he was the murderer of the rest of the missing people.
What an idiot.
He then he's just getting like really ballsy, like they all do.
Yeah.
Like, all serial killers like lose control in the end.
Reckless.
Yeah, and why wouldn't he be? He's gotten away with it for okay. So this is 2001, and he started doing it in 1998. So 3 years of whatever the fuck you like. So he hit her on the head with a rock, and he threw her in the mine shaft and left her to die.
Yeah.
But Barbarita managed to crawl out of the mine shaft.
Oh my gosh. Well done, Barbarita.
I know, right? After raping and beating her and tying her up, and she crawled out of a mine shaft and reported the attack.
Wow.
Holy fuck.
Well done.
She's 13.
Yeah.
It's incredible. As a result of that, the police picked him up the same day because she could describe him perfectly, describe the car perfectly. So she was like, fuck you. So the police picked him up the same day, and he immediately admitted to the rapes and murders. He confessed to having acted alone and never claimed to be insane. He also told the police where they could find the bodies of all the victims. Wow. His penultimate victim, who survived, Martiza, who they didn't say how old she was, and they didn't say her second name. She said, so she must have been super young. She said that she couldn't recognize him by face, but when they called him in and asked Martiza to identify him by voice, she could. And that was because when he picked her up, it was dark. So she didn't know what he looked like, but she could remember what he sounded like. And then they later matched his DNA with the sample that was taken from her.
Wow.
So they proved that it was the same person. So his spree was over.
Wow.
So it was revealed at court when the miners entered his vehicle, what he would do was lie to them, take them to remote areas, like say he was just doing like a trip somewhere else or whatever.
Yeah.
Then he proceeded to beat them until they were unconscious. And then he tied their hands and feet, raped them inside the vehicle. And then when that was over, he took them unconscious and hid them wrapped in sacks and still tied up. He would murder them by hitting their heads repeatedly and with rocks, and then covered them with rocks, buried them, or threw them into abandoned mines.
Wow.
And that just makes me think of the ones that survived. Like,
yeah.
They got out of a sack, or they got out of bindings.
Yeah.
And they'd had their head smashed in with a rock, and they still managed to fucking get out of it.
Right.
It's crazy. So finally, he would clean his car of evidence, such as traces of blood, hair, and other belongings of the victims. So almost all of the victims showed excessive violence. Their skulls were shattered, their ribs were broken, and their arms were broken, and they also showed fractures all over. It later turned out that Silva spent days studying the routes of the girls before taking them.
What?
So he would offer them, so he would watch them go to school.
Wow.
And then offer them a ride.
So it wasn't just random.
No,
That's
not
awful.
at all. Yeah, so before offering to take them, it's not ruled out that he chose them deliberately. They were all thin, dark-haired girls, and almost all of them had long hair.
And it sounds like they all came from, like, poorer families, since the authorities didn't really care.
Yeah, and also it kind of makes me think that they were walking a long way to school, if he could.
Right.
So, like, they had no other option to get to school than to walk a long way.
Yeah.
So if somebody offers you a lift for super cheap, you'd be like, yeah.
Yes, please.
Like, chuffed with that offer.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, his hook was to offer them, to take them home or to school as a private taxi driver for just a few coins. Yeah. So that's how he got them in the car.
Wow.
So on February the 26th, 2004, 40-year-old Julio Silva was sentenced to life without parole for the murders of 11 adolescents, 3 adults, and the attempted murder of 2 victims. His response before the judge was, "I don't know why I did it." It's just mad. So
I want to know more about his
like his upbringing,
personality, and, like, you know, he was married a couple of times.
Yeah.
He has children. Did something switch
psychopath.
in him? What? Yeah, was he a psychopath? Was he?
He just fucks off and leaves his family when he doesn't want to deal with it anymore. He fucked off and left that other woman because he just didn't want to deal with it anymore.
Yeah.
He's like, I don't know why I did it. He just, like, feels nothing for people. So I kind of get the impression that he's just a psychopath.
Yeah.
But yeah, it'd be interesting to know about his childhood and stuff, but I just couldn't really find anything.
Yeah.
The Chilean government they issued an official apology for failing to act more quickly, but it was reported to be badly received because it was cold and uncomforting.
Yeah.
So that was not received well.
Right.
So he's currently in the high security prison of Colina 1 in the Chilean capital of Santiago. So I looked up the prison to be like, I wonder what a Chilean prison like. Yeah. Turns out it's not good. So there's, like, loads of articles about how they're the worst prisons in the world. So
are they one of those, like, outdoor prisons where, like, do you ever watch Prison Break?
I watched, like, one season. No, maybe not even that. Like, a bit.
Yeah, in Prison Break, he goes to it might have been Mexico or a South American country, and it's like an outdoor prison where it's basically like these little, like, tents and stuff, and the prisoners have to just kind of fend for themselves. Yeah,
like a Lord of the Flies type situation.
Right.
It seems like this, like, it was saying, like, in this article that I read, because there's Colina 1 and then there's Colina 2, and this article was about Colina 2. So that what I derive from that is that it's newer and it's still shit. So it was saying,
or is like is one, like, you know, one is for murderers and terrible people, and then the other one is, you know, lesser crimes where, you know, blue collar crimes or whatever.
This has made me want to do an episode about, like, the worst prisons. Not, like, I don't know, like, you know, we did Broadmoor and you did the Colorado Supermax. Like, I want to do, like, the worst prisons, not necessarily like the biggest or the most famous or whatever. But anyway, we'll put that on the shelf. But so it's overcrowded, violent, and filthy. He's monitored 24 hours a day and is subjected to sleep control, which, from what I can tell from Googling, it's when you're in a solitary cell, so there's no windows. So they turn the lights on and off to mimic daytime and nighttime.
Oh.
that they had to do that because he attempted suicide with a shoelace wound around a toothbrush.
What?
So
wow.
I assume, where are you getting this shit? But I assume that they left the lights on all the time or left the lights off all the time.
Yeah.
And it was sending him insane. So he tried to kill himself. So now they turn the lights on and off as if it's daytime and nighttime. There were more suspected victims between April 1999 and August 2001 that could have been attributed to Julio Silva, but he's just never admitted to them. So, having killed 14 girls before the police knew he existed, he is the most prolific serial killer of minors in Chilean history.
Wow.
And that is the story of Julio Silva, or as the papers gave him the moniker, the psychopath from Alto Hospicio, Chile.
Wow. He sounds like an evil man.
There's just no, again, like when he's like, I don't know why I did it. Like there's fucking so many things where you're like, I didn't see any of this coming.
Yeah.
Like none of his wives. Because when it said he got married to somebody who already had 2 daughters, I was like, oh, fuck.
Yeah,
like
right?
He's going to abuse those kids. Like,
yeah.
Or when it said he got with that woman who had 6 kids, I was like, he's going to be really fucking horrible to the kids. Like, this is what's coming up, but nothing.
I want to know, like, what's their take on this man? Was he a loving, doting father for a short time? Was he abusive?
But apparently so. He was well liked, like, where he lived. But, like, I get the impression that he's a bit like BTK or, like, Ted Bundy, where he seems so normal.
Yeah.
He's, like, hiding in plain sight.
Yeah, that's true. And that's probably how he got girls to get into his taxi, because he seems like a nice person. And he's a normal-looking
guy.
Yeah.
He doesn't look creepy. He looks completely normal.
Right.
So, yeah. Wow, I'm glad we're doing this, because this is like, we're not going to hear about these people, are we? Like, ever.
No, we're just talking about English and Americans. We never.
And we know them.
About, right.
We know them like the back of our hand.
Yeah, exactly. So if any listeners want to suggest a certain country or region, we really love learning about these new stories. These are all new stories to us. I never heard of Magdalena Solís. So we're still transatlantic crime, but we're going on vacation for a few weeks.
The transatlantic part is you live in America and I live here.
Yes.
That's the transatlantic part, is that I can't fucking get at you. I can't make you listen to me unless it's scheduled. Right.
It's our physical locations.
It truly is. So, yeah, by the way, I just want to give a quick shout out to our newest Patreon, Liz. We love you and thank you.
Yeah.
You are a star in our eyes.
Coming your way.
Yep, that's Rachel's job, because you're on the American side. So she deals with the Americans. I deal with the British. So, yeah, thank you very much for listening, guys.
If you're in Australia or any other part of the world, then who knows who you'll get a sticker from.
Playing rock, paper, scissors.
Yeah.
For who's going to pay the £5 postage.
No, it's fine. We love you guys. We're so grateful for your patronage.
Of course we are.
Yeah, we love you forever.
We really do. Never let us down. Right. Okay. I'm getting sentimental here. I'll speak to you next week when we're in Australia, mate.
Yay. Good eye, mate. All right. Bye.
Bye.
Adios from South America.
Thanks for listening to Transatlantic Crime this week. If you liked what you heard, please rate, review, and subscribe. And if you'd like to follow us on social media, you can find us on Twitter at TransatCrimePod, Instagram at Transatlantic Crime, and on Facebook with Transatlantic Crime Podcast. Thanks, bye.